Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Man at YouTube with another Honing Your Airbrush Skills video. This will probably come out sometime in 2017, so first of the year. Now last year we did a lot of focus on cleaning and maintenance. I think this time we'll go mostly through technique and use and practice and all that jazz. Our monthly washout and drawing lines has been a bit lazy. We're going to have to pick up the monthly lines again, definitely. If I clean the airbrush on camera or not, that's no biggie. Anywho, I've got a new Heising. I have junked the old one that removed here for parts because I'm doing a little airbrush sales. I'm preparing Heisings, selling them to some friends and club members and whatnot, parts, needles, all that jazz. So that's utilised for that, and this is a new one without that. So this is the optimal model that you can buy. So that's what it looks like. Now when you do a decent clean out, it's lubricated at the back end, so you could actually see there's a bit of grease there. And there's another thing I like about these models: if you pull and twist, everything stays back, so you can readjust the tongue and whatnot. That's a really good function. So one thing I like to do every now and then, if it's in really good shape and there's no paint going in the rear chamber, I pull the needle back a bit, remove the nozzle, use proper method, 2 to 1 fingers only on the wrench, no pressure, and I push out any gunk that's stuck behind that bit. And that's going to cause you a lot of trouble, especially with your thicker stuff, heavy pigments, your micro fillers, all that sort of stuff. When you've airbrushed about 2, 3, 4 colours and then you try using something a bit thick and you're just struggling to get any paint out, doesn't matter how much you're thin, doesn't matter how high your PSI is, it's because you got some shit stuck behind there. Now, I was airbrushing very recently and things were just a little struggly. I was just pushing up the PSI about, you know, from 14 to 18, 19, and I thought instead of just keep thinning and pushing, I cracked her open and I was only expecting to find a tiny bit of lint. There was 2 mil long snake sausage of lint, shit and paint. So I pushed that little worm out, which actually wasn't a little worm, it's just little lint and stuff from tissues and paint pigment imperfections, just shit in the paint. Remove that with a little bottle brush, and yeah, she just worked absolutely fine, no problems. After every clean out, fresh lube. You got to do a full washout once a month or every few months, or project, whatever your go is. If you have a more expensive airbrush, such as your Stenner and Hardback, Iwata, whatever, they just need to be pulled apart and a really good scrub, wipe, clean bottle brush on the inside. Your cheaper airbrushes really take well to an ultrasonic cleaner. Don't throw your needles in. Monthly airbrush, that's about it. That's everything I'll throw you through. Let's do some techniques. Of course, do not forget your compressor maintenance. Bleed out the tank, bleed out the water trap. If there's some air leaks, check it out. Use some Teflon, put some soapy water, all that jazz. Don't let it break down. You'll have a nice long lasting compressor, especially if it has a water tank. Drain it regularly. For now, I'm just going to prime all these. I'll show you how I rig them up. And this is a little base from an old Matchbox kit, and it's been puttied and modified to take this Tequila Walker. So that's been hand painted with Tamiya texture paint. We're going to paint that for now. Prime these. Now when you're mounting your parts, you could either put it on a flat surface such as so, spray it, flip it, spray it, but you don't have the chance to hold it and look at different areas, get good coverage, shade, do all sorts of other things. It's limiting. And where you put your clip, obviously the paint's going to land there, so you need to look for an area that paint will not be seen. So something like one of these little points there, if you put a peg on, it's going to work quite nice. Now with alligator clips, you can buy alligator clips and mount them on bamboo skewers. Most electrical places and whatnot will sell them quite expensive because most electricians and technicians buy about a couple to a dozen, and I'll sell you that for between $2 to $10. We literally need like 100 to a few hundred. So go on eBay, they're cheap. The SMS, the scale model supplier, is selling these alligator clips attached to a metal flexi rod, and they can take a heap of parts. Not too much weight, but they can take quite a bit of weight. This big plastic piece, perfect for gunpla. If you want something that takes extreme weight, larger bits and resin, this is the HIQ part peg. Got a nice steel rod, alligator clip on top. Absolutely ideal. U-Star from China also does that, so if you have a look around some hobby sites, eBay, whatnot, you can find those. Scale modeler or suppliers for these ones in Australia. I suppose international shipping will occur at some point. They sell them between 10 to 25 a pack, so you can easily stock up to 100 no problems, or you can make them with bamboo skewers and alligator clips. That's not a problem. So having a look, this is not too heavy, so I can use one of these. I know for a fact that this part is going to go up against the model. It's not going to be seen. Everywhere else around will be. So it's just the simple fact of clipping it, sticking it. I could spray it, I could do whatever. As long as it doesn't bump into other parts, it's not bad. Corrugated cardboard, styrofoam, whatever you're comfortable with. And you see me in many videos just spraying a hole that faced apart, and I just colour in. If it's a massive object, there's not much to it, you have to put it on. Now sometimes a part such as resin or whatnot will not allow you to clip on anywhere, or the clip on is really weak and it's just going to fall off or whatnot. And what you can do is, I'll actually pull out a part as an example. This is a big resin piece I'm working on, and there's no way to secure it. So I drilled a hole here. There's an existing hole there. Alligator clip. Bang. She's rigged. Not a problem at all. And when it's glued together at that joint, it's not going to be seen ever again. So even though you're engineering and adding something to the kit that's not going to be seen later, it's going to give you ease for airbrushing, and the effect and the enjoyment's going to be a lot better in the long run. So that's definitely something to consider. Now, instead of having a gigantic bit of corrugated cardboard or styrofoam, consider having several smaller ones and separate the pieces. If different pieces are going to be different colours, you're going to get confused really quickly, and it's quite easy to have them on many different boards and labelled or memorised a certain colour. You would have seen that in many of my work in progress photos and whatnot, and I have been confused many times, especially when I'm trying to remember what layer is what when masking's involved, and what's going to be visible, what's going to be hidden. And that can be really easy if you just write down very basic notations and have your parts separated on different bases. So we can see here all the pieces are added on skewers, and they're definitely everywhere that is not visible on the surface. It's quite easy to handle. We'll get straight to painting. So we're going to mix some primer, and just a bit of a reminder on the use of primer, micro fillers, all that sort of thing. Separate mixing container, ball bearing. The ball bearing's bouncing around, it's breaking up the pigment. I find it to be the best method over stirring, shaking, even using those electric paint mixers. This is just absolutely ideal. Bit of a stick, you hold the stick up like that. You put the jar, and it just atomizes down the pole and goes straight into the mixture without causing any problems, spillage, wastage. You get faster and faster at it over time. I've been doing a lot, so yep. 50-50 thinner and primer. Take your time to measure it out. Again, the more you do it, the faster you get. It might take you a lot longer to do. That is never a problem. Good old quick stir. Pour the whole amount in, don't keep any in there. Plastic, even though it can hold the paint in there for a very long time, it can't hold it indefinitely. Finger over and the nozzle, pull down for air, pull back for paint, and it's going to bubble. Now we're going to do a test line. Now, when we look down the cup, and I'm going to zoom in a bit, you know that the needle and the nozzle is well fitted and there's no wearing, where you pull the air down and there's just no bubbles whatsoever in the pot. When you pull back and you allow a little paint out and there's still no bubbles, Airbrush is performing very well. The parts have no problems. What I've done in the way of tuning, changing parts, cleaning, she's at almost near optimal efficiency. And if I try to do a really small line, that's not a problem at all, which you can see there. So tiny lines is easy, thick lines are easy, and this is a micro filler primer. So when people just chuck primer straight in the airbrush and they can't spray for shit, it's not the primer that's at fault, it's purely the process that you're applying it. So following all the steps I've talked about from the start of the video till now, will get you airbrushing primer as fine as any ink or paint through a 0.3mm airbrush. So we've finally got a part holding about 10-15 centimeters away, and I'm just doing passes. And I'm just dusting it on, not putting it thick whatsoever. We've talked about this many times. You get more tighter and better every time you do it. You waste less paint, there's less overspray, all that jazz. And you just get better and better. And this way, if you just keep shading it on and on and on, it doesn't build up thick and wet and it takes forever to dry and parts touch and dust sets on it and whatever. It's nice and dry. This is a dry coat or a dust coat. If we were to do a wet coat, if we're going to do a shiny glossy model, we could go backwards and forwards a few times. You want to make sure that it looks a bit glossy. When it's a bit glossy, then you stop. So it's stop, up, down, move on. Up, down, move on. You don't let it pull. Your airbrush still continuously moves. And this way you prevent overspray, you prevent bumps, lumps, whatever. And when we're doing a high gloss finish from primer to paint to finish, it's going to look excellent. Now it's still going on a bit dry because I'm doing a weather dry model, I'm not doing a wet coat. You will put more thinner for a gloss model for a wet coat. So instead of 50% paint, 50% thinner, you might put 60% thinner. You might consider putting retardants. And instead of just using premix thinner retardant, you can actually buy little bottles of retardant. I've got one right here. Mr. Mild Retardant. You only need a few drops. Acrylic retardant from art shops also do the trick. Even if you think it's for poster paints or whatnot, if it's nice and liquid, it'll do the trick. If you try it out, not a problem at all. We'll just finish doing a wet coat. And instead of just trying to blast the piece and have it completely covered, even with a wet coat in one pass, just keep painting different panels and keep swapping, keep changing the different areas. It's still drying. It's going to take longer to dry. Dust may be a problem, but once the paint is fully matured, dried and hardened, you can actually use fine grit sandpapers, 4, 6, 8, 1200 grit polishes, all that sort of stuff to get those imperfections out. It'd be nice, and I've seen modelers do a beautiful clean car showroom mirror finish pass for the airbrush, 2 coats, done model. Not all of us can do that, that's not a problem. Now before we finish up, so we've talked about dry coats, wet coats, we're painting in primer. Do the bubble jet every now and then. I'm going to actually paint this diorama first. So I'm just going to be really quick. We'll do a wet coat because I don't want to be here all day. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2-3 tones and then matte coat it. for a very quick, easy diorama. Sculpting a diorama is not a problem. You get a base, build it up with putty, paper mache, wood, whatever, and then you put texture paint on it. And the texture paint looks ordinary in its colour, but once you start getting the primer on it, it starts to look interesting. And then when we do a bit of shading to make a desert look, it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, the only reason why we're doing this primer is to make sure it etches. Now, there's a lot of particles in there, sand, whatever, held by the paint. This is just going to make sure that that dust and paint and dirt just adheres a lot better, and the paint's going to stick on it. So the last thing you want is a bit of loose sand, and you paint it, and you touch the sand, falls off, and you get the undercoat. So when you put texture paint on, give it a good molest with your hands, feel, wipe off anything that's really loose, give it a nice rub, spray it down with some primer. I gave it a rub off camera, rub off camera, and yeah, it's quite beautiful, it's quite fine. Now with lacquers, if you're not going to hand paint, you can always reclaim lacquer. It's never a problem. Pour it back in your pot. I don't care what other people say. If you get like paint flakes and it falls in your paint, that's not a problem. A little thinner, shake it, let it store. Those dried ass paint flakes is just going to turn to wet paint again. So I'm just pouring that in. I'm going to wipe out the bowl with some manky tissue paper. I'm going to get some tissue paper with wet thinner, wipe it out again, flush it a few times with thinner, wipe the needle, and when the thinner that goes in the chamber, end on nozzle, pull back, and no primer appears up. It's nice and clean. We're going to change the colours. So, quick look. Very, very smooth. I always like to mirror with how smooth the finish is on the paint, especially when you do a wet coat. And it's really good for high gloss as well as matte stuff. And the base has come out nicely ready for our multiple coats. Now this does happen when you paint the thicker stuff, and I wanted to show you guys. Alright, wait until she focuses. Your inner crown is to be absolutely clean. Now there is about 1/4 to 1/2 mil, some points up to 1 mil of paint build-up around the crown, and that is going to cause spluttering. Paint's going to come out, air's going to come out, it's going to collect that paint that is building up like putty, and it's going to put speckles and lumps on your work. It's pretty shit. It happens almost all the time, regardless of your airbrush, when you spray primers and thick stuff. So we pull the needle back, so we're not going to bend the tip of the needle, and with a Q-tip soaked in thinner, you're just going to rub the outer ends, and we're just going to remove the bulk of it. Or you could just remove it altogether and give it a bloody good scrub and make sure it's completely cleaned out or ground down to nothing. And then that way you're not going to get speckles or shit on your work. Now when we shade things with an airbrush and paint, there's 3 ways you could do it. Base coat it and then add a little highlights and lowlights. Paint it its darkest colour and build up lighter, or paint the lightest colour and then shade areas darker depending on the look that you're going for. Now, a bit of a Warhammer background, wargaming, all that, they generally start at black and build up. A lot of my dioramas and terrains for the scale of Gundam and whatnot, I don't do black anymore unless it's very dark, urban or whatnot. I'm going for desert, and I like to start with a nice middle rustic brown, move to a sand white colour. I normally do Mr. Hobby or Mr. Colour sand and tan, but the SMS one is quite to my taste. And just do some highlights with sail to pick up certain points and whatnot. Afterwards we could go back to brown and do further lowlights. So straight off the bat, I got the base on a little platform like this. The other side, I don't give a shit what colour it is, and I could just start colouring it in. It's the base coat, so the most important thing is we get every nook and cranny, and there's no primer underneath, because we're just going to do a more sloppier coat with the lighter colours, and where we haven't hit, it's going to appear to be this brown colour. So I'm going to go to every corner and just really royally flood it with paint without flooding too much, and we're going to covering the whole details. So just a quick wet coat, colour it in, and the other ones are going to be more dry in nature. We're just going to be shading on very slowly, layer by layer. This one, it's just smashing paint on as quick as we can, and you can see how I'm turning constantly and trying to get paint everywhere I could possibly reach, until I'm very, very satisfied that anywhere that could cast a shadow is brown. And it doesn't take very long, a very, very quick process, and she is completed. Now, SMS are pre-thin paints. It's very similar to Mr. Paints from Ukraine or wherever it is, Eastern Europe. I put a ball bearing in it. SMS do recommend putting ball bearings in as well as shaking it with the ball bearing in it before use. Again, best way to atomize paint into a pot. And even though in theory it works straight out of the jar, I open it like a whiskey with a little more thinner, and especially since we're going quite dry, but that's with anything wet, dry, whatever, I always further water down these paints, and it just moves so much more satisfactory and easier to what I need. And you can see that I could just do some beautiful dust stuff. It's not thick at all. It just goes on like a cloud. It's beautiful. And doing it thickly, it does pull a little too easy. So you can see how it pulls at the end. It pulls very quickly, but you do not give it full power or full yiff. You just delicately dust on. And what we're going to do is we're just going to dust on the paint, small paint circle, and I'm just painting the upper areas. And I'm just landing paint wherever I want. I sometimes pull back and give it an overall dust of the edges. I want the edges to still be very brown, but shading into sand colour. And then we're only going to paint in the top direction. So wherever there may be a shadow or a bend or a cliff or something, it's going to stay brown. And we're just going to dust. And it's going to be inconsistent. Some areas is going to be more heavy with sand. Other areas is just going to be more brown. And you can see how I'm just randomizing it a bit, and I'm only going down. So when you look at it, it's a bit random. Go multiple directions too. Let's do some build up here and there. Different variations. And you can see that that's pretty random. Pull back and just dust further. Oh fuck. What happened was I splashed some paint. It went over my nozzle and it's put very, very ugly splotches at the front. So I'm going to do a bit of a build up there. This is why you seriously should have the lid on it and not flail around, because I could definitely salvage it, and that's what I'm doing right now. There you go, that looks kind of cool. And what I'm going to do is dust on a lighter colour in some concentrated areas, and she's done. So we've got some sail colour, and I'm spraying some next to sand, so it's a lot lighter than sand, and it just gives a little variation, a little change in tone. I was going to hold back, dust a tiny bit, and just build up in different areas, and just have it so that it looks a bit different in various areas. Very little. Less is more. And that's about it. That's all you really need to do. Really strong concentrates at some areas. And then we'll go back with brown and we're done. Now we've got a little bit of brown. And what I'm doing is just shading some effects at the bottom and around and just over exaggerating some points. This is I just have fun. Pull back, just blend and build up colours wherever you want. There is no right or wrong way to do it. Explore and spray where you feel it just needs to be sprayed. And I'm just doing a bit of a brown edging. Give it a bit of brown in some of the low areas. And it just gives a lot of variation and interest to your sand. And I'm mostly attacking the sides. I'm not actually attacking the tops whatsoever. And I believe it's just adding interest. And you can see that I'm just going to different areas and just building up. I'm going to colour in the feet areas quite heavily, so at least you know where the magnets go. And there you go. I reckon that's not too bad. And it's just so much better than just one colour across the whole board. And it's not really meant to take the show away, so there's not too many colours. We'll give it a base coat and a wash and another day flock, but that would be for a different video. Now, when I used to start out airbrushing and whatnot, I used to be terrified of applying matte coats because it would frost up and I'll have trouble controlling it and thinning layers, whatnot. Never be afraid to put something in your airbrush and apply it to a test piece or a model. It's been for a long time I didn't realise that matte was easiest applied through lacquer, and if you thin it heavily you can just apply coat upon coat upon coat and it didn't really speckle up or cause any problems or frost up too much. And the SMS one, you just build it up like crazy and it doesn't cause any problems as long as the surface is bone dry. If you have any liquid on it, washes or whatnot, it will frost up in those tiny little areas. But that would be the same go with any paint. Where this is all dry now, and then I'm going to actually ink after the top coat. It's nicely, beautifully thinned down, and I'm just putting a wet coat down until it's quite glossy. I'm just going to open it with a bit of thinner. I'm just noticing it's coming out a bit dry. It's not flowing as nice as I want. As soon as I spray it near full force, I expect the finish on the actual kit itself to look quite glossy initially and straight away. And spraying now, it's very glossy. So beforehand, I did not have enough thinner, and now it's plenty of thinner. I've got a sufficient amount of clear coming out that it's covering enough of the model that I want. And sometimes clear paint can be a little hard to judge and thin, but that all comes with plastic. The sound of the hissing of the air coming out, how wet the surface looks when you apply it, all of that just comes with practice and knowing what's going on. There's still a bit of a hiss, so more thinner can be applied. I'm not too fast. But I know that it's still on the end of thick, opposed to being too thin. So mind you, it can sometimes hiss, talking at the start of the video about too much shit at the end of the nozzle. That can also cause the same hissing sound. So if you add a little thinner, and there's not a huge change, then you know there might be some sort of problem. I did a bit jet bubble technique in case any sort of paint builds up on the nozzle. And we pull back and we dust on. And I'm going for a dry coat this time, so we did a wet coat. Let it build up. And even though it looks all glossy and shiny, even though we're doing matte, it's not going to firm up and give us our true colour and finish for a good 5 to 10 minutes. Another thing I sometimes neglect is because there's no pigment in clears, you feel that doesn't need as much cleaning and thinner just washes out immediately. I find that quickly gunks up my airbrush. So don't make that assumption. A clear, you flush out and clean extra good opposed to a solid colour paint, because you just can't see what is left behind. Sometimes it's good to use a solid paint colour afterwards, and that way you know you're flushing out the clear with whatever solid paint's in there as well. Giving a good bubble jet method, empty it out in the jar, flush out as much of the thinner as possible. The more we're flushing, the more crap is exiting. Waste jar, and we just keep repeating until the liquid is absolutely clear. Now in this hour or so session, I put some serious shit through this airbrush, and I've taken the nozzle off and I'm putting the needle through backwards, not a brush, because I want to show you what it looks like complete. In that one session, I have had this much crap come out of my airbrush, and that's just the nozzle. So it did start to struggle a bit with the matte coat. I did say there was a bit of a squeal. It could have been something. Obviously, one of my paints either had a contaminant or was a bit sloppy, and one of the tissues I've used one too many times and broken off in the airbrush. So every few colours, especially if you're using primer, have a bit of a look. And even though I entered with a very, very clean airbrush, I got crap in it within a very short period of time, purely of what we were just spraying there and then. So yeah, be adjusted to removing your nozzle frequently. Now, pro tip, I can sometimes be a bit lazy when reclaiming paint, and you can always tell in your clears. It's not so opaque. It's got an almost white, milky consistency to it. Just because it's changed colour to an almost solid colour does not mean it's still clear. Spray it over a clear surface or something, it will be 99% clear, probably the slightest amount of a tint or filter. So just because you contaminated clear does not mean you've completely fucked up. It's still usable. Now under a soft light, this is how it comes out. It's quite lovely. I'm going to just probably wash a little bit and see how it comes out, because I actually kind of like it exactly how it looks now. Or maybe a very, very light wash. But you can see the variations, the edges are quite dark, and it just does not look flat, and there's bits of patches and whatnot. Tiniest amount of the black wash. It's come out perfectly. Very happy. Can't wait to see what it looks like with the walker on it. So we're going to apply some of the methods that we've just looked at, and we shall paint Guy's hair. So we're jumping into that, and we'll colour match it to what we have existing. Now, having a very close look, I am copying the box art. There's a bit of pink at the top, a tad darker at the bottom. We have some sort of hemp light sand sail colour. So first I'll colour check some colours, prime it in white and shade 3 tones, I'd imagine. Being a very light coloured object, I'll be using white Tamiya primer and treating it the same as your grey primer, only a tiny amount. Being such a light colour, I don't normally paint things light and cheery as these subjects, but undercoat always makes a massive difference, and we're going to see a model that's quite lighter and cheerier than what is used in my content. So as usual, external mix, nice little shot glass or something. Don't keep it in there for too long, it'll eventually melt all the way through. Fill the cup and away we go. So jet bubble. And you can see that it works quite beautifully. And being white, it's got a high pigment density. So we're going to see that there is the green, the cracks, the whatnot on this white cream, that it eventually fades away into nothing. But it occurs at a few passes. That's enough. I'm going to let it seize up or harden up, and I'll go back for a second coat. So it doesn't build up too much. The clouds are, or the dust or fumes are clouding up a bit because I forgot to turn on the extractor booth. And you can see it's not a solid white yet because it builds up too much. But if I was to keep spraying in the one spot non-stop, starts building up and jeweling, and that's just not appropriate. This has already firmed up to a putty state, so we're going back to this piece and we can go again. So it does have to take a couple of coats. It's not as good as the grey primer density wise, but once we get 3 coats on it, it's ready to take on the tan. I've got some of the tan loaded in the airbrush. I've thinned it way further than 50-50. It's probably 75% paint. And it just goes on ever so lightly. So instead of mixing paint, I've got a white base and I'm just going to shade on a little bit. And I'm just going to keep bringing up the intensity until it's roughly the right shade that I desire. And that's looking alright. That's about right. We'll check with the box art. It's not too bad. It's probably slightly darker than the box set, but I can live with that. Though it is not as dark as the actual paint colour is. So mixing and putting through your airbrush is not necessary. You can mix dry through your undercoat and your top coat. Now what we're doing is we're going to give the fringes and the end of the hair a tiny touch of olive. And all we're doing is it's heavily watered down and we're just spraying directly off it and relying off the overspray to leave a little colour at the bottom. And just give it a bit of a touch up. Pull back and overspray stuff up. Something like that. So it's very, 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 very faint. The hair's a bit harder. So at the back I'm going to colour in the back of the hair follicles in case anyone looks up them. Like that. And then what we're doing is we're just touching. And you just move it around and just target the individual tips. Spray it from afar. And it's just indirect spraying, relying purely off overspray. Now we've just got a little bit of just a colour builder. There we go. I think that works out well. I might put brown on the tiniest tips. So that's looking pretty interesting, and it's going to equally look interesting on the figure. It's almost like it's had brown hair and it's dyed it blonde and it's fading out. And what we're going to do is with super thin pink, just going to dust a little bit on the top. Just like the image. There we go, that's it. Just ever so subtly and slightly. Nothing special. Right on the top. Almost indirect, complete painting. Just for the sake of colouring. And mimicking the box art. And just adding a slight touch. And you could almost probably not even see it on camera. But it's just ever so... It's the same sail colour. And it's just got a lick of pink. I chucked on a clear coat to protect it and a matte coat to matte it down, and this is our individual pieces, so you can see the pink ever so lightly blending into the slight amount of yellow. Very happy how that came out, and that just kind of makes it, because the face is where the eyes would be drawn into, and I want to have just a lot of delicate shading around there, more so than other parts of the body that is not drawn there straight away. So the frame arms girl, there's bits of sanding, there's bits of non-sanding, some are glossy, some bits are not. And the reason why is because we assembled it. There's a bit of green putty, sanding, buffing. It's black, but it looks terrible. So we're going to prime it with Mr. 1500 surfacer. Shaded a bit with some gem and grey, top coat the hell out of it. So it's really good stuff. This sort of stuff practically operates a lot like a paint. It's just a fact of chuck in and thin. There is not much of a micro filler. If you need some micro filling in your product, you're probably best off using some usual Tamiya or another product. And then you can put this on top of it because black is smothering. It just conquers everything. Okay, so I might have... Let's have a look. There we go. So the usual process goes, we've got a piece, we'll zoom in a bit, and we're just going to wet apply it. Small coats, you can see that the pigments are very dense. It's a lovely product, I've reviewed it before. It is a fully fledged primer. It's also really good as an undercoat, a paint, anything. If you're painting black, you apply this on, then you apply some clear because the matte component is not very rough. And you can see it's nice and shiny and slick. There you go. It's beautiful. So this has some details and it's just sort of impossible to mask in airbrush. Hand painted it in lacquers. And even though I got it in the line, it's very neat. The actual finish is rough as hell. The brush strokes are just very prominent. This is not a problem being lacquer. I've allowed it to dry, and what I'm going to do is run just lacquer thinner through the airbrush, dust it on till it's quite nice. I will reactivate the dry paint to wet paint. It should self-level and dry flat. Might have to do it a couple of times until we get a beautiful finish. So just lacquer thinner, the part, it's like that I'm painting. And you're just wetting it. You don't put too much because the paint's going to run. You leave it for a while, and I could already see it flatten, but it's not perfect because there's still a bit of the brush strokes. It's only smoothing out. And then we'll just do it again and again, 2-3 times. Give it 30 seconds to almost a minute, and then you hit it again, and you hit it again. We're probably up to the 30-second mark. And then I leave it, and I wait for another 30 seconds to a minute, and it should be flatter. I've done that about 4 times, and the improvement's huge. You do not see brush strokes. It's quite smooth. This is really good if you're doing gloss finishes or high gloss finishes where you don't want any floor or whatnot, and you might have a little orange peel or something. You'll do your coat, you allow it ages to dry, and then you put 1 or 2 coat of thinner on it just to reactivate it and to just go back to a putty liquid state, self-level, and harden again to be absolutely flat. You do run a risk that if you do it too much, the paint will droop, thin, or build up in areas, and it could ruin it. So it's just finding that happy medium of a tiny bit. You want to apply just enough so the whole surface is glossy. For a while I've been of the belief that painting something dead black is just such a waste, and it's an empty void that is not very interesting to look at, and that black can be detailed and played with in a way that looks interesting without using black or black in conjunction with other colours. I like using German grey on black, midnight blue, a really dark green, and then you lighten it up to something like almost a grey, and you can make black look like a better black than anything else. And what I'm going to do is highlight some parts with German grey that's black. So you can see that this is the top of the thigh. I'm just going to dust on the top half German grey and then colour it in. And then you've got this gradient that's German grey all the way down to black. And it doesn't matter if you matte it or colour it in, whatever, there is variation. There's something to give it a look. You can even highlight finer points in the centre, a grey colour, for more interest in look. But Gorai doesn't have that much shading. It's more two-tone in the art, so I'm going to leave it like that. So we're working on the skirt, and we've put these white decals on according to the box art, and they're just really striking on the black and the German grey. So I'm going to do a bit of shading to make it blend into the skirt a bit more. Now first we've got these tabs on the top, and I'm just going to angle it just right and colour them in. And make sure they just disappear. There we go, there's no more. And there's also one more underneath there, in case anyone looks in those areas. So I'm just going to ever so slightly off the edge with overspray, just shade the ends there. And then what we're going to do is pull back and just only the top half. We're just going to colour them in a bit. We're just darkening them a bit slightly, only halfway down, and that's it. They look a little more nicer. They don't stand out as much. And these are the black parts done. They look really interesting. You can barely notice the German grey, but you can definitely see that they're not just a void that light disappears, that something's going on. You can see that there's a little bit of grey hand painting, and then it blends into black. A little bit of hand painting. Everything's a bit satinish. You've got those stripes, and they just sort of just disappear a bit, and they're quite interesting. It's going to look a lot like how the skirts are there. Sack tap. And also put the decals on for the panties and glossed, then matte them. So going to get a bit of a wash, a sludge wash, and put them away in storage for final assembly later. So with the fleshy bits, some of them were in half, especially the thighs and the torso. Nasty seam line going down the middle, so that was glued and sanded. White primer by Tamiya was applied, so we've got a really light undercoat for the flesh, as well as I'm making sure that any scratches, whatnot, is microfilled, and I'm not seeing any imperfections. So pretty happy about that. We can go straight into the flesh colours, and the application is pretty much the same as shown previously in this video. So the flesh bits are painted, and I'm very happy how they came out. I used flesh, which I don't normally use. I find it a bit too tanned, with character flesh on top of that, and that came out to be a really nice combination. It pretty much captured what was on the box art well. And carrot orange by the Bones Beautiful Girl paint set, only for the blush. So if we have a look here, her cheeks and her shoulders are very blushed. Don't know why her shoulders are blushed. And there's just a tan to light and a bit of blush everywhere else. So I did the same. I've got a heavy blush on the shoulders. I'm going to put that little white glint on there as well. And the face has got the same thing going. So I'm going to paint the glint with a dot of flesh. Going to touch up the nose so there's a brown line, and paint in the mouth. Having a look at the flesh tones on the box. I feel I've got it pretty close on the model kits. Especially with the shoulders. I've got the blush with the glint. And the face looks a bit blushed on the forehead, but that gets covered by the hair. That's not a big problem, but I feel like I got that pretty cool. Got the little line on the nose and the mouth done. So the flesh has come out quite nicely. Last component of Goro. Everything is primed with Tamiya Surface Primer. Nice and smooth. Gonna paint these colours. Everything is painted. Mr. Colour 23 Dark Green 2. Going to chuck on some olive, a lot like the armour, so the sides where it's a bit darker and underneath and all that. So we shall look into doing that. Colours for reference. So we're painting this bit, and it's all just coloured in pink. Now what I'm going to do is I'm only going to hold it in this angle and paint it in a lighter pink, and allow the shadowing to just be what is not covered or what has not been oversprayed. So just holding it that shape, when I lift it around, you'll see the darker pink. And there we go. Underneath is quite dark, at the top is quite light, and you can tell that it's been shadowed, but not shadowed with light, actually shadowed with paint. So if it's completely flooded out, you'll still see the darker pink underneath the folds. After extensive painting, both the Hyacinth and the Spa Max, as well as stuff, so we just did a very quick clean on the two airbrushes, and a lot easier to use. The weather's a bit humid, so spraying is very difficult at the moment. Managed to get a few straight lines, but all of it's a bit cockeyed. The second water trap has worked a treat, though a tiny bit of water did blast through in about 60-70% humidity, so don't know if it should be daisy chained or airbrushing just shouldn't go ahead. Did my very best to drain the compressor, but all that aside, the finish is not too bad. Got a bit of a satin sheen on these parts, not ideal, but that works. A bit of frost on one bit. I'm just going to quickly dust on a bit more paint where the damage is. That's also not a big deal. That all said, it's all done. Pretty happy. Nice experiment playing around with paint when it's really humid. Solid colours just a little hard. Use a lot of thinner. When it's humid, don't bother with finishes. Finishes just a real struggle. All in all, a bit messy. Good to show off what the rig looks like. The booth is not normally that full. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for more honing your airbrush. We'll probably do a little more maintenance. And I've also just painted her as well, and that came out really well with the multi-directional colouring of the grey, the pink and the flesh. Very, very, very easy techniques. All the parts are just 2 tones except for the hair, that's 3 tones. And yeah, popped out nicely. See you later.